Voices from the Hedge, a novel in progress by Alden, read out by me, the very same. Chapter 1. At HE Corporation Headquarters. Well, one of them. "Agent, are you in position?" asked the voice on the comlink.
"Almost, sir. Wait, who are you talking to? With respect, sir."
"To you, of course, cadet." The operator seemed nervous himself. Maybe that was the reason why everybody was so on edge. He didn't sound very old himself. Maybe 20 at most. It was probably his first time on the stand as well.
"I'm sorry, sir. This is my first actual mission on the field."
Eos was trying hard to sound professional, but very obviously failing. As he ran, panting, across the field towards the objective, he heard the young operator give some rather unclear orders to the other agents. Eos wondered what they could be thinking. What it would be like to start an infiltration, but at the same time having done dozens of them in the past. Did it lose its touch after a while? He had only talked to 3 other agents since he had left Enstra's class, and all of those had been pretty young themselves.
"Keros, are you listening? Report, for God's sake,"
said the operator in a harsh tone, dragging Eos back out of his imagination and into embarrassment.
"Oh yes, sir. Eos Keros reporting, loud and clear. Sorry, sir, the weather. Please repeat."
It was indeed a clear and very hot night, and Eos was relieved that he could use that as an excuse. Being based on portal spells, the comlink tended to work only in moderate temperature, and today was definitely too hot for comfort. Of course, during class, he had been through exercises in any possible weather, but the reality of it was something else. The smallest things suddenly seemed so important, just because it wasn't an exercise. It was a real mission. Eos reached the end of the field and found himself behind a large hedge that apparently served as the outer boundary of the HE headquarter complex. The building was in sight, a large box of bricks with at least 10 levels and almost no windows. The depressing facade of corporate reality.
"I don't know how the connection is and whether you can hear this, but I'll come back to you after I've put the other agents into position. I wasn't prepared for this, really. Stay put. Keros, I mean. Stay put."
Eos, realizing that he'd again sunken into daydreaming instead of listening to the operator, sighed in resignation, although he couldn't help but chuckle over the young operator's own tension. It was true, though. Why was he so unfocused? Wasn't this the day that he had been waiting for, training for during the last year? Now that he thought about it, it was obvious, wasn't it? Being on edge during your first mission? That must be the most common thing. Just get yourself together. You know all of this. You can do it. It's a standard infiltration, he said to himself as he put his back down onto the ground. This spot wasn't really the coziest, but it was the designated position. Orders over preferences. That was number 1. Why hadn't they put him somewhere more to the right, though? He was sure the operator had picked that spot on purpose. Under a hedge. Just like the stories told you. A hedger sitting under a hedge. Classic. Just because magical security experts specializing in breaching artifacts from outside were commonly referred to as hedgers didn't mean they needed to actually crawl under one of them. That was so yesterday. Of course, Eos knew that precisely this feature had given the profession its name. Agents that were lying in wait outside the building while their partners were infiltrating it, giving occasional help, and most importantly, breaching magical locks remotely. The corporations were always up to date on tasteless exterior decorating, or the lack of it, and having thick hedges around corporate areas was common. Eos knew that during the early days of hedging, crawling under the corporate hedge had been the reality for his profession. Legends like Jonker and Kuro had probably spent more time hiding from security in the shade of the hedge than within the agency office. If this hole of turf was where hedging legends were born, Then Eos would gladly join in. As he laid out his equipment in front of him, the operator's voice came once again through the comlink. "This is operator to Keros on private connection. Do you copy?" "Yes, sir. Loud and clear. I'm sorry for the inconvenience earlier." Eos was actually very sorry. From what he had heard, a number of senior agents were participating in this run. People like Salem or Professor Zuran. People who could decide his future by letting him become their apprentice or not. He didn't want to lose composure in the face of all these professionals. "Don't mention it, cadet. Are you in position?" Eos was a bit unsettled by the fact that this desk kid on the other end of the comlink was calling him a cadet, when it was so obvious that he was struggling himself, but of course it was true. Eos was the one underperforming so far. "Yes, sir. In position precisely. Ready for movement. I mean, activity. Ready for activity, sorry." He bit his lip at the idea of confusing movement and activity calls. Luckily, this was a private connection and none of the seniors could hear him. "Good. We're looking for teleport location for your partner now. He'll contact you on channel 5-1 as soon as he's in the building." Trying to regain a professional look on his face, Eos took a quick note of the channel number on his cuff in an effort to not let past mistakes affect his performance. That was the second rule. Always stay professional. Meanwhile, the operator continued talking. "And another thing. I read here that this is your first run. Well, good luck, kid." That would have been a nice touch, if it hadn't been spoken with such an arrogant voice. Eos closed his eyes, and his professional look made way for a sarcastic grin. "Of course, you moron. Make it more difficult for you beginners when it's obviously your first try as operator too. Heck, from what I could tell, this newbie had already broken 2 or 3 rules of action," thought Eos. The operator had disconnected. Silence on the comlink, and all around Eos. Time to prepare, he thought. He caught himself adjusting the position of his Henrik table for the 3rd time, and took a deep breath. It would be fine. This was just a regular mission, no unexpected occurrences. And even if they screwed up, Eos and his partner were team 4. 3 other teams were already at work on more important parts of the assault plan. Why be concerned? He went over his briefing again. Operation Morning Light, Team 4. 2 agents, field and support. Why did these bureaucrats always make it sound as if field agents were more important than hedges? Of course, sitting under a shrub and playing with magical toys wasn't exactly as cool as running from the corporate guards or placing explosives or stealing important documents and the like. Nothing of that awesome agent stuff. But everybody knew that without mainframe support, any field agent should go home on the spot. His position was just as essential as a field agent's. At least, that was what they said. Eos nervously moved the Henrik table from his left side to his right side again. They said some agents were so skilled, they would just hedge their locks themselves and leave their support to bite their thumbs in the meantime. And with seniors involved in a mission, who could know? Maybe Eos would be just sitting here doing nothing while Mr. Fantastic was bringing order to the corporate world for him. Or at least, order to this specific building. Team 4. Objective. Remove delicate corporation documents from HE possession. Well, steal the papers, got it. Precise information was given to his field partner, that was all he knew. A bit more to prepare would have been nice. Of course, Eos had looked into it on his own. That hadn't been part of the mission, but he had been unsure. Was it implied to research independently? Eos didn't want to disappoint his new superiors on the first day, so he had looked into HE security himself, just to be prepared. The comlink signaled the transmission. It was a rough, deep voice that made Eos suddenly feel young and fresh, but at the same time slightly incompetent and naive. A voice full of experience and grit. One that you could only get if you had seen some things. "Hey, kiddo. What's up?" Silence. Eos didn't know how to respond. Agents were supposed to... Are you there, kiddo? I don't have all day. A quiet snicker was audible from the other end. Eos caught his composure.
Yes, this is Agent Karras, sir. Your support. But aren't you going to do security questions first? According to Guideline 2 of Part 14 ADG, the field agent asks security questions to assure their channel isn't being...
What's the color of Enster's pants?
Excuse me, sir? I mean, repeat, please.
The color of his pants. That's my security question. Or whatever. Eos's face took a decisively unnatural color, probably approaching that of Enster's underwear. He was making a complete fool of himself. And all that in front of this obviously very senior agent.
I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't have questioned your method. Enster's pants are...
A burst of laughter sounded from the comlink. This senior was clearly having fun, and Eos was feeling terrible about it. But it was a gentle kind of laughter, almost personal. Don't worry about it, kiddo. I'm fooling with you. Anyway, Eos remembered the mission. He returned to his professional face, or as close as possible, and went through his notes again, in doing so, knocking over an artifact with his elbow. He hastily turned and picked it up, slightly cursing his nervousness. Are you all right over there, kiddo? It doesn't sound like it.
Yes, sir, I'm fine. I'm ready for activity, sir.
Yeah. Aren't we all? The old man's voice came through the comlink. From the sound of it, he was searching the room, or at least moving around in it. This doesn't look like the first floor, though. More like the cellar. Eos took a deep breath. They hadn't even started, and this was already so far from anything he had trained at Enster's class.
Can you, report your position, sir? My interface isn't picking up on your location.
Probably can't reach on the ground. Your interface? Recalibrate to a different layer, or something. Don't your modern interfaces do that automatically?
Yes, sir. No, sir. They don't. I mean, they don't do it automatically, sir.
Eos's face was returning to that unnatural color. He should have recalibrated it immediately, without needing his partner to remind him. He had even said that it was probably inside a cellar. Why hadn't Eos thought of that himself? He was probably making such a bad impression right now. Listen, kid. You don't work with older partners often, do you? Said the agent, more like a statement than a question. Clearly, it wasn't hard to tell.
Yes, sir,
Being addressed, sir, all the time is nice and all, but just drop it, will you? It's annoying.
Of course, yes, of course. Naturally.
From the other end of the line, another snicker.